Hi, this is Chris Feehan again from the ECG Armory. Today we're going to work on the back of the legs. I'm going to do the thighs and the shins and close up the backs, and you'll see that there's two different types of backs. This one's going to be completely closed. The shins are going to be only done on one side so that we can put Velcro between and seal them with Velcro so you can get them on and off. What I'm going to do today is, and what I did yesterday in the last video, was heat form this a little bit so that it joins better. It was about 3 or 4 inches apart. Now it's only about 1 inch apart. This should easily be able to be compensated for with some tape and the glue, and it should hold. Hopefully it'll hold very well. Let me just get my tape, and I'm going to tape this up, and then we're going to get started with the cover strip and do the same procedure we did on the forearms and the biceps to completely close this thigh piece here. Now this is the left thigh piece. The last one we worked on was the right thigh piece and did the ammo box. This one is just a straight thigh piece. It doesn't have any other attachments on it. Let me see if I can line it up, get the tape on, and try to keep it in place so that we can appropriately glue it and get them as close as possible with the cover strip. I'm just putting that on really tight there, and then I'm going to try to manipulate this and get this just in the right position so that it lines up as best as possible with the bottom and the top. And that can be a challenge. Let's see if we can get that a little closer. I'll probably have to do some cross strips just to make sure that we get it just right. Now I want to try to get that bottom ridge to line up. And I'm going to work my way up once I get that bottom ridge as close as possible. I'll try to start adhering the tape from the back. Let's see if we can get this as close as we can here. I see there's a little piece in the middle. I might actually have to trim that off a little bit. There's a little piece in the middle that's stopping this from really sitting flush. So let me just do a little bit of a trim here. There's a little bump here because I did this kind of haphazardly just with a pair of scissors just to trim it down to the level I wanted it. Now I think it's not letting it sit correctly. I want to try to get them as close as humanly possible. That was just a quick trim. Let's see if that's a little better now. All the way up. Let's start again from the bottom. Line up that bottom edge as best as possible. What I may do when we get to after it's all dry is I might put a little piece in the bottom to kind of keep it secure, because that's sometimes where you get a break point. I'm not so happy about the top. The top is a little far apart, but I think the cover strip will easily cover that, because this is going to be a 20mm cover strip. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let me get a cross strip going. A little piece here that's interfering a little bit. Let me just make sure that's not going to be in the way. I'm just seeing when I flatten this out if it's going to line up and it's not going to separate. Okay, that looks pretty good. A little separated on the top, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to reinforce this a little from the back here. Put a couple of pieces across. We want to keep this joined through the entire gluing process because it can take 2 or 3 days for it to completely dry. And I want to make sure that it dries as flush as possible. We're going to use a combination of the clamps and magnets again. I got my magnets all laid out this time, which makes it a little easier. Get onto the cross piece. And I want to put one right at the bottom just to make sure it's going to hold as best as possible. can see that's pretty close. Let me get one of my 20 millimeter cover strips and just see exactly how big it's going to have to be. So you start from that bottom ridge, right at the bottom ridge, and you go up right into the tippy top where they meet, where the top ridge is, which looks like it's going to be about here. So I'm going to go right across that ridge there. I'm just cutting that, and then I'm going to just trim the sides, and I'm going to do a little bit of just the corners, just do little teeny triangles. Just going to sandpaper that a little bit just to smooth it out a little bit. Now for these, I do like to try to make sure that they adhere very well. So what I am going to do is sand a little bit on the back of the cover strip, just so that it adheres better to the glue. You're also going to see me doing that when I do the snaps. I use snap plates, and sometimes doing a little bit of sanding on the back of the cover strip will help it adhere a little better. So that's the 20 millimeter cover strip right on the back here. It's going to go right from the bottom to the top and end right about there. Now there's going to be a little gap there. I might put a little cross piece there. I'm going to put a little cross piece behind here after it's all dry, just to reinforce it a little bit, make it a little bit cleaner. And this is going to be a real challenge because you see how it's like naturally curved, so I'm going to have to really use a lot of magnets and things to keep this down all the way across the entire length here. It's going to be difficult, but we'll do our best to keep it in place for a couple of days and let it set. And again, to help that along a little bit on the back, I am going to sand it just a little bit, just to rough it up a little teeny bit, which you don't really have to do on the other ones because they're pretty flat to begin with, but this curve on the back of the thigh is always problematic, and it's going to be similar on the shin as well. Just roughing it up a little bit, just giving it a little bit of a surface for the glue to adhere to a little better, taking off that coating. Okay, so that's our good side. And we're going to adhere it right like that. I'm going to do our best to try to keep it flattened down as it dries, which is always a challenge. But we'll do the best we can here. And again, there's a little gap there. Again, I might put a little cross piece there. Let me get my other plastic glove on. I got my glue ready. I just got to cut the tip. Again, these disposable tips are invaluable. You really get to use the most of the glue and get the most out of it. And you don't get it all bunched up and have the cap get stuck to the top of the glue, which happens a lot. So you can just use it one use and then you just chuck it when you're done with it. Okay, let me snip that off. And I'm going to put it right in the seam, and then I'm going to wiggle it around a little bit. And I'm putting it in the seam because it also acts as a filler. As I said, this dries like rubber cement. It's like a rubber-like material that's kind of flexible and pliable, and it also adds some structure to it. So any gaps will be filled by this and help adhere the cover strip. I don't want to go too crazy because you don't want it to ooze out too much on the sides. You might have seen in the last video, in the speed up video, me doing some cleanup work, getting rid of some of the excess, and you want to minimize that as much as possible. Okay, that's a good helping, I think. I think I got good coverage on both sides here. without going too crazy. I'll just go over one more time. Get off any excess here with the head. Try not to get any strings. Okay, let me set that down. And then we're going to put our cover strip in place. Again, I'm making sure I'm using the really shiny side here. I'm going to place that right in the middle. Right at the middle on the top here. Okay, I'm just going to hold that in place. I'm going to get a clamp. Clamp that down on the bottom. I'm going to move my finger up here and on the back. Just try to flatten this out. Get the glue to spread out on both sides. And I'm going to put a clamp on the top, and then I'll start putting some magnets. See a little oozing, not too bad. Okay, let's start with the magnets. I'm going to start from the back. I'm going to do the top and the bottom. I see a little oozing in the middle that I'm going to have to take care of with a rag. So let me just get the top and the bottom done. Move that over a little bit. And I think I'm going to have to add a lot of magnets to this to really get it to flatten out as best as possible. That just connected to the other one, which I didn't want to happen. Hold on. Let me separate these. Let me use the flat ones just to get the most coverage here. These are very, very powerful, these magnets, and you got to be careful. I broke a couple of them already. Because when they do snap together, they really do it with some major force. So I'm using those here. Might have to use even more to get it really flat. I might even use a big clamp right in the middle, if I can, just to make sure I get that completely sealed. Now I've got a rag here. There's a little bit of leakage on the side here. I'm just going to use the tip of the rag here and just wipe that a little while it's still wet. Not much on the other sides, which is good. Maybe a little on the top here. Wipe that off while it's still wet. It makes it a lot easier than having to go back and pick it off later, which is what I had to do on the forearms. That's looking good. Let me manipulate this over a little bit, make sure it's flat. Make sure that's flat. Now we got to deal with that middle area there. Let's see if we have a few more magnets here. I have some smaller ones here I could use in the middle. Let me get those ready. These are some smaller ones, just to get right in the middle there. And I have some circular magnets as well. Let me get those ready. It's hilarious how sticky these are, how much force they have. It can be ridiculous. And I've had some breakage. A couple of these have broken just from snapping into each other. You got to be careful when you're putting them away as well, which I wasn't as careful as I could have been. Okay, so I'm going to get one little double one here and put that in the middle here, right in the middle. And I'm going to put some of these circular ones right in the middle here too. And if you want more force, you can stack them, which you'll see me do here in a minute, if I can get more of them. And the more magnets you put, the more force it applies downwardly on the opposing magnet. I want to use them all up because I want to keep some for the next piece as well. Okay, so that's a good amount, I think. And if we need to also add rubber bands, we'll add a couple of rubber bands as well. But that seems to be holding pretty good. Let me just manipulate this, make sure it's as flush on both sides as possible. I'm just manipulating this, making sure it's catching where I want it to catch. And really giving that downward pressure that I need to make sure that the strip is staying in place. I think I might need a couple more on this one. I'm going to put one on the top and one on the bottom. I need a little more force just to keep it flat. Because again, this is kind of a curve, and we're trying to put a flat piece on a curve, which is always problematic. But I think that's the best we're going to get right now. Now the other thing you can do is use some rubber bands, just to give some extra force and keep it in place. I'm going to try to put this rubber band right down the middle. If I can get it over this clamp. And I might put one more on the bottom area here just to make sure it's as stable as possible. Just do it gently. Make sure you're not moving any of the magnets because I got them just where I want them right now. I'm just going to kind of gently work this around and try to get this around the leg without damaging anything. Oh, that might be too, that might not be big enough to reach. No, that one's not big enough. Let me see if this one might be. No, that's not going to be big enough to reach. And I don't think this is going to give me much force, but I'll put it on anyway. With just one twist. Okay, so we got it laying pretty flat. We're going to have to let that set. Hopefully it'll adhere and make a nice join. Again, the glue will fill in some of the cracks, some of the space in between. So we just want to hope that we get a good join. It does look like it's staying down pretty well with the combination of the clamps and the magnets. These I want to separate out a little bit, just to make sure I'm getting it right across. That's looking good. Okay, that's looking very good. Slide this over a little bit. Just to make sure it's getting both sides. Okay, so we're going to leave this to dry. And we're going to start on the shin, and then I'll do the other thigh and the other shin probably in a speed up video. Now this one's a little different. This one we're not going to do both sides. We're only going to do one side because the other side is going to have Velcro on it that it's going to adhere to when we close the legs. It's going to be a flap. Now as you might have remembered, when I identified it, I wrote in one side flap. So this is the right leg, which goes on your right leg. So you want the flap to be over the left side. So we're going to put the flap and adhere it to this side. And this one, since again we're not going to use this bottom part at all, we're just going to adhere it to this side. I can go like this, glue it on there, and clamp it all the way along, so I don't have to worry so much about the magnet. So this one can just be a bunch of little clamps. Let me get those clamps ready. Probably you need about 4. And we're going to clamp this all the way along and try to separate it out from the left side. Now this one I did heat form a little bit to get it to close, and as you can see I got it so that it's literally right up against it, but it is a little wonky. You can see it's not lining up properly. Once you put the Velcro on there, you'll force it to adhere properly. It won't really make much of a difference. So let's get that one ready. We're going to use, for this one, is the one case in the entire outfit that you use a 25 millimeter strip, because you want to have it enough to adhere and enough that you have a little extra space to put the Velcro that's going to attach to the Velcro hook side over here. So we're going to put a strip of Velcro hook side here. We're going to put a strip of Velcro fabric side here, and then about half of the strip is going to be adhered to the shin. So we're going to adhere this about halfway like this, and then there's going to be that overlap, and then that's going to connect with Velcro to the other side. Now this is always a problematic point. This can sometimes come loose, it can sometimes pop off, so we're going to try to do the best we can to get this to adhere properly and really cement it down. Also, even more problematic is it's curved, and this is a flat strip, so I am going to bend it a little bit with my hands, try to get it to match that curve as best as possible before I glue it and cement it on. So let me just fold that under there so that we don't have that to worry about right now. Maybe I'll even put a clamp on there to hold it in this wacky position here. So I can get this clamp is not that strong, but I'm going to see if I can get it to just hold it there. And I'll get another one on the other side. Just because we're not even concerned with that other side right now. Really, all I'm concerned with is this side and trying to get it right along here, and then I'm going to clamp it right along and see if we can clamp it and get it to hold down. And try not to get too much glue on the other side. So let's just get the sizing correct. Again, this is our 25, it's marked here. And we're going to go right from the bottom ridge up here, right down to the bottom. And then we're going to find like the break point, which appears to be about here. That looks good there. So when I butt this right up against here, this is going to come all the way down and then fold over the other side. Let's just see where that's going to land. I just want to make sure I'm getting it the entire way down. Okay, and this is not straight on the top, so I'm going to have to cut the top a little bit, and I'm going to have to remeasure because this top is not straight. I can see right here it's a little off. I'll try to cut that as straight as possible here. Actually, let me use the razor blade because I want to get a nice cut. It's still not straight. That's better. Still not straight. That's better. Get my pliers. And let's remeasure that because now I got a straight edge on the top here. It's going to land a little lower. I think we have some extra here to work with. So now it's another inch or so, about here. Okay, let's get it straight. Okay, we broke that off. And we're going to do our clipping. We're going to do little clips on the ends, and then we're going to do a little bit of sanding just to smooth it out a little bit. Just going to sand the edges a little bit just to get them smoother. Round them a little bit. Okay, we're going to pick our side. And this side looks like it's the best. This side looks the best of the two. So this side I'm going to rough up again a little bit with the sandpaper just to make it adhere a little better. Again, because of the curves, it makes me a little nervous that it's not going to sit very well. And this helps it dig a little and eat into the glue a little better. Get the excess off there. Now I got to try to curve it with my hand just to make sure that it's going to sit as flush as possible. And you can see it's not going to, it's going straight out, and that's a complete curve. So with my hands, I'm just going to bend it a little bit to try to match that curve without breaking it. Just curve it around a little bit with my hands, give it a little pressure. Not too much, just enough to kind of match that curve. You saw me do this, I think, with the forearms as well, and it does help, just so that it doesn't pop out when you're gluing it. Okay, and then that's that curve, and then it has another little curve at the bottom, so I'm going to just curve that the other way just a little bit. Again, just working with my hands just to kind of make it like this S shape, just to have it hug that a little easier. You wouldn't think it would help, but it does really help, because then it just sits much more flush against the item when you're trying to glue it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now it's sitting like, you know, almost in that same shape, just by me forming it a little bit with my hands. Okay, so now this is going to be, again, tough, because I got this other piece I don't want to get any glue on. Even though if we get a little on it, it's not going to make much difference because I'm putting a strip of Velcro here, but we want to get it right down here and like adhering to here. Now you can leave as little or as much as you want. I want to make it so it's nice and straight, so I'm going to just glob some glue on there and then clamp it all the way down to keep it secure as it's drying and curing. And then on the back side, again, on the back side of this, we're going to put Velcro on this back of the strip, and possibly on part of the shin as well. That's going to adhere to a strip of Velcro that's on the back here. Now I already did size this up with my leg, and I think I did take off enough so that this will fit nice and snug on my shin very nicely. Okay, so let's start putting the glue on. Again, I'm going to try to not get it on this other piece, but we might get a little on there. I'm not going to worry about it too much. So I'm just going to glob all the way down. And not too much. This is just kind of going in a circular motion here, trying to put enough on there that it's going to really make a nice seal. And keep this on here the entire way down. I'm going to go back over it and make sure that it's right on the edge here. I don't want to have too much excess, so I'm kind of spreading it around. You can see some is collecting on the head here. I'm going to try to take that off at the end. There we go. I'm going to leave that on the side. And now we can start laying this and start attaching it. Now again, I'm going to put it about 75% of it on there. So I'm just going to try to lay this down. And we can manipulate it while it's drying. And then clamp it as we go. See how much down here I got it. Okay. Make sure my clamp is ready here. Clamp it right there. Make sure it's butted up against the top here. And I'm going to get my next one. Clamp it like right on the curve here. Making sure it's hitting the right points. I'm going to clamp it right where it starts to curve, right about here. Clamp it a little further down by the next curve, and then probably one right on the end, just to be doubly sure. So make sure that's nice and straight all the way down. One more clamp on the end, I think will send us home. And what I'm looking for here is that there's no space. It's nice and flush the entire way down, which it looks like it is, which is very nice. So this one we don't need the magnets again because we can get the clamps in there. And you can see I left about, I'd say about a 1/4 inch. But again, that doesn't really matter. I'm going to be putting Velcro, fabric Velcro across that entire length, and then hook Velcro down this entire length. So basically I just let this sit. I'm just making sure, again, I got it butted up against the top, I got it straight up and down, and that I don't see any spaces anywhere along here, because that's going to be devastating if we do. I don't want to see any spaces at all. And I see a little excess here. I don't know if I can get that. I might have to take this clamp off. I see a little excess here. I'm going to try to rub off because it's dripping a little bit. I went a little crazy on this particular one. There we go. I got that. Just have a rag handy to get that off if you get any excess like that. I'm going to make sure it's not on my fingers. So I'm going to put this clamp back on here. Right at this point. Okay, so that's looking very good. All the way along, nice and flat. Not too much oozing. Let me just squash it down a little with my fingers. Just a little bit of pressure, just making sure it's adhering nicely along the entire length. And it looks like it is. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this be and let the clamps do their work and just let it sit for about 2 or 3 days, and then I'll go back and add the Velcro, and then we're pretty much done with this shin. The only other thing I do put in the shin is I usually put some foam here so that it sits nice on your leg and it doesn't shift around, and I might put some Velcro on the bottom that I attach to the boots, which we'll go into that when we get into the more finishing stages. Okay, now last time we did the other shin with the sniper plate, and I just want to show you how that's coming out. Let me take off the clamps for here. And that's coming out really well. You can see it adhered really well to the back of that all the way through. It's starting to get hard. This has been about 2 days of drying, and so far it looks like it's dried the entire way through. It looks nice and straight. I was going to glue the sides. I think it's adhering so well in the middle. I don't even know if I'll need to, but I might just put a little dab of glue on the corners to get this done. But the next piece we have to do here is do the flap on this, which is this side. So it's exactly the reverse of that one. We're going to do this. This is the flap side. So we're going to, instead of doing this side, we're doing this side. And we're going to do the same kind of procedure. We're going to put a 25 millimeter thing along the entire cover strip along the entire thing, clamp it along the way. Hopefully I have enough clamps. I think I have enough left here. Yes, I got these other little ones. And then we're going to do the other thigh and do the other thigh and secure that one across the thing. And the other thigh was the one with the ammo pack. And in the other video you saw me forming this, and I got this down to, this was like a 4 or 5 inch space. Now it's only down to like 2 inches, and I think the tape will be enough now to hold this in place very well as we secure it. So I don't see any problem getting that cover strip on there and getting this this adhered along the entire way. And the only thing with this one is I think I still should take off maybe a little more on one side of this. Let me just see how it lines up here. It lines up pretty well. I'm not crazy about there. It's a little soft, but I really can't take off anymore because I want to keep this curve. So I'm going to have to just see how close we can get this and maybe do a little more trimming on this. But I'll do that as a sped up video and adhere these two, adhere the cover strip to these two pieces as well. Now the last thing I'm going to do for today is the, you might have seen me last time sizing up the shoulder straps. I think I'm going to go ahead and attach those today. Let me get my two shoulder straps together. And we can try to adhere those. Those I just put on the 2 clamps, and that should be enough to hold them. And again, it's really a waiting game. You attach them and then just wait for them to dry. So I'm going to attach these 2 like this. I already marked off about where they go. Usually it's about on the 3rd ridge here. So there's the main ridge, and then there's 3 more ridges, and right on that 3rd ridge is usually where you put this, right before it starts into the point on the chest box. You can see the curve there, so you want to get it right to about that point, and I marked it with a pencil yesterday or the other day when I was doing my other video, and determined, and I also wrote on here RF and LF. This is the left front and this is the right front, because that was which ones I determined fit better, fit the best, and had the best curve. So now you'll have that curve like that, and you'll be able to attach that to the back. I'm also going to put a snap right at this point on both sides. That's going to be another strap that's going to connect the back plate to the front plate, so that it takes off any actual pressure off these actual straps. They're just there for decoration. They're not actually holding up the chest piece. And that's important because these do break. These do have stress sometimes and do break. I might put some fabric Velcro behind them just to reinforce them, or another piece of plastic. Sometimes I take another piece of leftover ABS from these cover strips, and I'll put it on the back just to reinforce it and glue it down and clamp it all the way along. I don't know if I'll need to do that right away, but sometimes if they start showing wear, I do that. So for these, I'm just checking that I got it lined up correctly. I already made my marks, my pencil marks, and this lands right about in the middle of the third one. Let me just check that it looks appropriate on this side as well. And if you're looking at that from the front, that looks like they're about in line with each other. Let me just make sure. You got to get the angle just right. And basically you just glue these and clamp them, and that's what I'll do now. And also with this, I do like to rough these up a little bit. Sometimes they don't adhere very well. So a little bit of roughing up right up into that point helps them stick a little better. So I'm going to rough that up just a tiny bit. So that the glue will stick a little better in here. And that's my left front, so just rub that a little bit. Now, these can be problematic even with the E6000 glue, which is usually pretty adhesive and it usually stays for quite some time. These can be problematic just because they do get some pressure and they do get a lot of action. So this does help them stay a little better. Okay, so that's my left front. Let me do the right one first and get my clamps ready. I'm going to use the 2 giant clamps just to clamp it down once I get it in place. So again, I have a little pencil mark because I want to get it just right, and I want to get that angle shooting straight out from there and going towards the back. And then we're going to put, again, another strap underneath there just to actually do the holding. Okay, so let me get the glue ready. And again, I'm only going to go up to the third little ridge here. Just going to go right on the edges and put like a bead right around the middle. And that should be enough to hold this. I try not to go right to the edge because I don't want it to bleed out and I don't want to have that glue showing. So I kind of just do a bead there and then I do a bead down the middle. Big bead right down the middle here. And that should be enough to hold it in place for quite some time. I'm going to go across the ridges here in the middle. And hopefully that'll be enough for it to hold and adhere very well. Okay, so now this is, make sure again that I get the right one before I do it. Okay, that's the left front. This is the right front. Okay, I'm going to do it right to that pencil line. I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to squeeze it a little bit, just make sure it's adhering. And I'm going to put a giant clamp on it. Make sure I get the angle just right here. And I got my little, I already made little marks exactly where I wanted this to land. So I want to make sure I don't go past that line. Shift it a little, damn it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to leave that be like that, and then I'm going to do the other one the exact same way. And I'm going to go like this for now, just so that it doesn't move. Might be a mistake doing both at the same time, but I'm going to give it a shot. Same thing, going to put it right on just the edges and the inside, and that's all going to, gravity's just going to take care of that and sink it down. And putting the glue all around there, across the middle sections, cross pieces, and then a big globule right down the middle. Again, very generous helping there, but I want to make sure I get enough on there that it's going to hold very well. And carefully move this. That's holding very nice. Make sure the angle is right. start applying this next one. And again, I already marked it, so it makes it much easier. I don't screw this up. Already marked exactly the angle and where I want it to land, which is right again on about halfway through the third ridge here on this particular kit. And this is a Waltz Trooper factory kit. Again, it might be different on your kit, so check other build threads and see what they say is the best practices for your particular kit. Just one big clamp right in the middle, and just hope for the best. So there we go. I'm just going to take this and carefully set this down over here. Okay, so I found a good spot to lay down the chest where it's stable and where it's going to be able to dry appropriately without causing too much disturbance. So I'm going to get started on the other shin and the thigh, and do that as a sped up video and let those dry for a couple of days, and then we'll get started on some of the finishing work, starting maybe doing some of the strapping, some of the snaps, some of the body parts, and the final steps of like the fine painting and some other touch-up work that's got to be done. The very final step is actually polishing all the armor, making sure we get out any little scratches, try to cover up any scratches or anything that might have happened during either when it was originally shipped or during the processes we've been doing. And that's all done with the Novus polish, and we'll be doing that as like the very, very, very final step. So let's get started on this one, and I'll do this as a sped up video and see you guys next time. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope this is very helpful to you, and thanks for coming by to the ECG Armory today. Bye everybody.